Hello, listeners! We are absolutely chuffed you've decided to join us. Grab a packet of biscuits, brew a warm cuppa, and curl up for a wholesome American conversation about quintessential British food from everyone's favourite baking competition. Please enjoy Hats Off to Bake Off, an amateur baking podcast.
And welcome to our very first episode of Hats Off to Bake Off, an amateur baking podcast. My name is Nick. I'm here with my friend Mallory, and we're doing a little quick introduction episode, just kind of like episode 0 of who we are and what we're doing and why we're making this podcast. We'll get into like the actual episodes in a bit, but I thought this would be a great way to like start off and like get to know us a little bit before we start diving into baking. So say hello, Mallory.
Hello. It's
Hi.
Great to be talking here with you today, Nick. This has been a long time coming, and I'm excited that we can finally record together and bake together.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
I think I asked you out to do this podcast like 2 months ago, and it just took us like forever to start. So I'm really glad we're here. Microphone's all set up. We're baking
comfy.
literally all day.
So long.
We're drinking water out of teacups because we're classy like that. It's going to be great. But I've set up about 10 or 12 questions, just kind of like get a gist of who we are and what we're thinking and what we're doing. So we're going to go through a couple of those just so you guys get to hear who we are and all of our general weirdness. We're lovable, don't you worry. So why don't you introduce ourselves with our name and what we do?
Perfect. So as Nick mentioned, my name is Mallory. I'm a restaurant sustainability consultant in Boston, which is where this podcast is based. I've been here for a little bit over a year. I found a really cool community, which includes Nick.
It's part of me.
I know. Thank you.
I mean, I'm part of it.
We'll get there.
I'm in Boston. It's okay. That's what I meant.
And what do you do, Nick?
I am a receptionist at a graduate school for music. I met Mallory playing board games because we're both lovely nerds. And I've been in Boston for coming up on 2 years, like a year and a half maybe. But I grew up in Massachusetts, so I've been around Boston basically my entire life.
Oh, I should say that. Yeah, I'm from Michigan originally, so this is very different. But it didn't feel as, I thought there would be more culture shock moving here, and there wasn't really. But because this podcast is going to be all about baking, I want to ask you, how did you learn to bake, and who are your baking heroes?
So, I mean, as I feel like any baker says, I like grew up baking with my mom or my grandparents. My dad doesn't bake as often. He cooks sometimes, but not really. But my mom is like my biggest baking influence, my biggest like baking hero. Between apple pies and chocolate chip cookies, like those were always classics at pretty much every family dinner. Like they had to have those at every dinner. I mean, it's just like a basic apple pie and like Toll House chocolate chip cookies, but like they had to be at the dinner table or else it wasn't a Christmas dinner.
This is important. The best brand of chocolate chip cookie or the best recipe? You're saying it's Toll House?
I mean, I'm a little bit, biased because it is my mom, but they are pretty wonderful. So she makes them like very thin and chewy, and I like mine either thin and chewy or thin and crispy. I don't like them really cakey. I don't like the ones that are like really big, like the ones that are really popular today. Okay. I'm not a big fan of.
This is fair. I just have to say I'm a Betty Crocker stan. Betty Crocker's chocolate chip cookie recipe is
not the one from the bag, but like
the recipe in Betty Crocker's cookbook is the best chocolate chip cookie recipe, hands down. I'll have to make it for you.
We'll wait for a bonus episode before you make that.
Wonderful.
Like, that's not very British, but we'll go with it.
It's not British at all, but I just needed to know that about you. It says a lot about a person, what their favorite type of chocolate chip cookie is.
But talking about baking heroes, it says a lot about me. When I was a child, I watched a lot of Food Network. I was in love with Rachel Ray, and I watched a lot of Emeril Lagasse. Like these days, I've upgraded, maybe not upgraded, I don't know, to like Bon Appetit and like tasty videos, and they produce a lot of content that I just like absorb as much as I possibly can. But when I was a kid, I would watch a lot of Food Network, like Paula Deen would be on constantly, or Rachel Ray's 30-minute meals. I just loved anyone from that. So that's kind of where baking came into my life, was I was just always into cooking. Like I wanted to be a chef when I was a kid. that didn't happen.
Oh, that's so
I
cute.
don't think I would want to be a chef now, but I still like baking and love baking and like want to do it more. So
That makes sense.
here I am.
Yeah.
How about you?
For me, I think my story for how I got into baking is very similar. For me, it was really my grandma, who was the baker in our family and was the one always for birthdays. Like I have so many memories of her like bringing my dad a coconut cream pie on his birthday, or like doing different things like that, and really baking alongside me. My mom is not a baker. She's an amazing cook, and was very grateful when I started showing an interest in baking, because I now am pretty much always the one making desserts in our house. So I have been baking our family's birthday cakes forever. So my dad gets a German chocolate cake every year on his birthday. My sister requests something new. Mom pretty much always gets lemon bars. So that's been a tradition in our house for a long time. And I've recently taken over. This is something I'm super proud of. I now, or at least since before I moved, I was responsible for the pie crusts at our family Thanksgiving. And that's something I'm hold in high esteem. I'm very proud of, because that's something that my grandma sort of like passed on to me. And I don't know. I feel like people get overwhelmed by pie crust, but it's not so hard once you get to do it. I don't know that I have a baking hero in the same way you do. I grew up without cable. So
That's
TV
valid.
watching, it wasn't really something that I did. I think I just like, I enjoy watching all bakers, and I get excited by the projects rather than the people baking them.
So like scrolling through Instagram and being like, oh my God, that cake looks so freaking
Exactly.
amazing. I want that.
Yeah, so I follow a lot of like patisserie Instagrams and get like so excited about the different desserts that they're doing. But I never really thought about, until you sort of asked this question, like who the people were behind it. So
That's
yeah.
cool. So just generally growing up a little more, where do you feel you are your like current baking skill level? Or just generally in the kitchen, maybe?
Yeah, I would say I'm definitely above average. So I'm trying to think of skills that I have. I'm very good at chopping.
You said today you love stirring.
I love stirring. That is an actual thing that I said. Oh God. But I feel like I'm pretty good with I'm very good at, this is going to sound so basic, but I'm really good at reading and comprehending a recipe. And we talked a little bit about this today as well. I'm pretty good at using my intuition to understand like what things should look like, what sort of processes need to
like
happen.
going with your heart, whereas I'm like, I need to look at the recipe and to know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I keep checking the recipe like over and over again, make sure I'm doing everything right.
Yeah, I have a lot of trust in what's happening, and I think I feel pretty confident. Yeah, I don't know exactly where that puts me. I don't think I could nail like maybe the trickier things like choux pastry, something I've never tried before but could maybe do. I have made sourdough from scratch, and that went really well. So I think I do a lot of research and sort of conglomerate a bunch of different ideas into one thing that I use as a recipe. And so I think that's part of what makes me so, like, the skill level that I have is from looking into like, how did 10 different people do it? What worked well for some of them? What didn't work well? What do I think makes the most sense given what I'm trying to achieve? I don't know.
That makes sense.
We'll see going forward. I could just have completely put my foot in my mouth. Next thing we bake could totally just crumble, burn.
Hey, we've had a great couple of bakes. As a caveat, we're just starting to record, but we have like done the bakes for the next 2 episodes. So like we'll be talking in past tense for a while just about our bakes. But so like today was biscuits. Last week we did cake. So we're catching up on the recordings now. I feel like I'm a little bit the opposite of you, whereas I'm not as super sure about like what things work or why they work. And it's half of the reason I want to do this show is to get that intuitive knowledge about what works and why it works. And like I hope with like the history and the science bits, we'll talk about that in a bit. But knowing that and doing a bunch of bakes all at once, hopefully I'll like get to that point. As I said, absorb as much video content and audio content and shows and documentaries and stuff about baking as I can. I think before I started this podcast idea, I'd already watched all of the seasons of Bake Off at least 4 times.
Oh no, that's more than me for sure.
I am not even joking. I am not joking at all. So I have watched a lot and I know a lot more than I've ever actually practiced.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could probably tell you a lot about a bunch of other things, but I've never actually done them in real life. I just kind of want to get to that point where I've baked a lot, or at least enough to be more knowledgeable about what I'm baking,
Mm-hmm.
even if I've never baked it before. Like if I was on the show, I would be so bad at technicals. I'd just be like, what's going on? What's happening?
See, I feel like I'd be very good at technicals. I know that's that's my hubris right there. But I think on the whole, I don't think I get flustered by that. I think I'm like, okay, based on what I know, this should look like this. I don't know. We'll see. And then given how comfortable you feel, what do you tend to bake? Like, what are your favorite things to bake when you're in the kitchen?
Well, so recently I meant like 2 years ago, cough, cough. I got really into baking chocolate cakes, like proper Instagram style. So like layering them really high and like frosting between and like and I really wanted to get into that. And so for my birthday a couple of years ago, I made this like gorgeous, decadent, dark chocolate cake with chocolate frosting. The best cake combo in my opinion. And so I really wanted to do that. And so I started buying the piping tips and learning how to decorate a cake and how to make a cake that works well to decorate. And so I like to bake with chocolate for sure. And I would bake a lot of cakes. And most recently, because I baked Swiss rolls for our next episode, I think I might have fallen in love with Swiss rolls. So I've baked about 3 in the past 3 weeks.
I didn't realize you were up to that number. That's amazing.
Well, I baked one a week before that. I baked ours for the episode, and then I baked another one after that because
Wow.
I wanted my other low carb chocolate Swiss roll, which went really well. So I just kind of like kept on baking them because I knew how to make them well. So chocolate cake. And you?
I love that we're so different. It's really exciting to actually hear this, but I tend to like things that are a little bit more comfort food. So I do obviously do cakes, especially for birthdays. They tend to be more of a special occasion thing. Everyday things, I think definitely those Betty Crocker chocolate chip cookies is probably like one of the things that I can bake without looking at the recipe by now. I love pies. Pies are really easy and fun for me. Rolling out and making the dough is super satisfying, and then seeing it come together is amazing. It's funny though, I don't love baked fruit, so I don't enjoy eating pies so
Wait,
much.
What?
I know.
What?
Whoops. I love baking pies, and I'm teaching myself how to enjoy baked fruit. It's the texture that gets me. I don't
Really?
love it. I can do apple pie. Most other fruit pies I'm not huge on.
Is it because it's too soft, or is it because it's just like
It's
all
like
one texture?
all
or?
the fibers still, but it's also mushy. I can't describe it, but it's not my
Interesting.
jam.
Oh. Fruit pie jam.
Whoops, that was
There will be plenty of puns, Mallory. Do not worry.
okay. Good. Hopefully, they will be more purposeful than that one.
What have you baked most recently then? So probably not a pie.
It was a pie, actually. Well, excluding what we've been doing here, fall and winter is very much pie season for me.
Okay.
And especially I had a Friendsgiving that I made an apple pie for. And then there's a tradition in my family. So my family, for some context, is vegetarian. I was raised vegetarian. My parents eat vegetarian pretty much exclusively. And so every Thanksgiving, as our sort of entree and main course, my mom always makes a mushroom pie. It is so good. And this was my first Thanksgiving sort of away from home. And so I made it this year, and it turned out fantastic, honestly. I wish I should make it all the time, but because it feels like such a tradition, I tend to keep it to
that makes
Thanksgiving.
sense, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wouldn't have enough pie just like randomly throughout the middle of like May. Like no, it's like a Thanksgiving, Christmas, like a holiday pie.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't baked a lot other than what we've done recently. I mean, recently I've been trying to do a lot of low carb stuff because I have to be a little low carb right now. And so I've baked a lot of weird stuff lately. I made low carb meringue cookies. That turned out really good, but they like didn't look like they were supposed to.
Oh,
so
I do
they
remember.
were like,
You showed
they
me
were
those.
very brown. They tasted magical,
The
but
ones
they
that
were
look like the poop emoji.
pretty much. They were 100% the poop emoji. Sans a smiling face. They tasted great because they were so crumbly. They like melted in your mouth. You could eat like 9 million of them because they tasted like nothing, but they were still like slightly sweet, but not too sweet. It was good. They worked out well. And then after that, I tried the low carb Swiss roll, which I made before our episode, which turned out really good actually. So I like adapted it and made it better for the second time I made it. So that was good. I think one of my favorites right now, just because it's like got all the chocolatey goodness you want, but without a whole lot of carbs. Not at all low calorie, of course, because nothing low carb is low calorie. But who cares when you're eating low carb?
It's so true.
So the all-important question, Mallory.
I know. So really part of what we wanted to talk about here on this introduction episode is not just an introduction to ourselves, but an introduction to the show. So Nick, I want you to go into what on earth is Hats Off to Bake Off? How did you rope me into all of this? And why are we here today?
Hats Off to Bake Off, an amateur baking podcast, was like a pipe dream that like appeared one day. So I have all like my favorite ideas. This is something that artistic or like very creative people will talk about, like where they find the creative ideas. One of my professors in college talked about this too, where on a bus or in bed or in the bath, like the 3 Bs were her thing.
I've never heard of this.
So her thing was the 3 Bs: in your bed, on a bus, or in the bath are 3 great places to have creative ideas. Generally, you're like not thinking too much. You're kind of relaxed. You're by yourself. And so I was on a bus one day and I was like, I had just gotten so addicted to the McElroy content, all of their podcasts. I was just like getting into that. I've been thinking about the last year or two that like content creation is something I would really like any of the short little videos and the Vox content. I love when they like go deep dive into some topic and they start talking about that. I thought those are fascinating. I really wanted to do them. And so I was thinking about how much I adore Bake Off, how I've seen it a bajillion times, and how I'll never get a chance to be in Bake Off, but to be able to like bake along with them and to like do more baking in general would just be super cool. So it was just like formed in my head, like almost fully formed the idea, or at least the name came to me, was Hats Off to Bake Off, which of course I like Googled right away. I was like, I need to know if this has already been taken. Has someone already thought of this? They had not. So
thank God.
I would have had to change the name and it would have been terrible. It never would have taken off. So Hats Off to Bake Off was just like this wild idea that I had. And I don't even know if I knew Mallory at that point, but we started hanging out. We had board game night.
I feel like you mentioned the idea to me pretty quickly after we started hanging out. I don't know how baking came up the first time, but like
we definitely
once
talked about
clear,
baking at some point.
Yeah.
I knew you liked to cook. That's why I mentioned it to you.
Yeah.
And I knew you liked to bake. So I was like, yo, Mallory, like this was like probably 2 a.m. on a Saturday.
Yeah.
We were like at a movie night and like with a bunch of friends. And I was like, yo, Mallory, by the way, you and me, I think we should do a baking podcast. And if I remember correctly, you like didn't really think about it too much. You're just like, yeah, that sounds cool.
I would do it. And here I am doing it. Like
Yeah,
I feel like
here
this
you
is something that I'm like, I love it because this is very much your baby. And I love that you're sort of welcoming me along for the ride. I think it's the perfect level of responsibility that I have over this, that I can just sort of sit here and talk about things with you and research what I need to. And that's sort of what I'm excited for a lot about Hats Off to Bake Off as well. Once we get into it, is that this isn't just a sort of companion go along with the series podcast. It's not just a fan cast. We also sort of wanted to take the time to really explore the amateur baker in ourselves, and try, like Nick mentioned, baking along with what the bakers in the tent are doing, but then also taking sort of more of a deep dive into maybe the history of some bakes, talking more about the science of why certain baking techniques work the way that they do. And that's what I'm really excited about, is to not just talk about Bake Off the show and like what they're baking, but then also just talk about bakes in general, how you can bake things at home, how to adapt different recipes for if you're like Nick and trying to avoid carbs right now, or if you have some allergies, or
Also
anything
like
that.
Nick.
Also like Nick. You got a lot of stuff going on, man.
There is so many things going on with me. You'll learn all about this very shortly,
It's
but
so true, yeah.
it goes on forever. That is exactly what I was hoping this would be. So I'm so excited you're here with me. I obviously want all your input. I want all of your extensive baking knowledge. So
There's
I think
not
this is
much
going to
of
be, we're going to grow and learn together.
Yay.
As I said to you earlier, HOTBOPOD is a safe space.
Yes. And I love that it's an amateur baking podcast, because we're amateur podcasters and amateur bakers.
Oh yeah, no, like I
All of it's
would
amateur.
never say I'm a professional baker in any stretch of the imagination. There are some great podcasts out there about Bake Off where they talk about the show and what happened. There's some podcasts that are like from just like people who love the show, some people who are like actual bakers, and they're all great. But I want to like deep dive more into what are they baking? What is this about? Why are they doing this? And like, how is that quintessentially British, and where did it come from? And what makes this thing work, and how does that happen?
Yeah.
So the idea of intuitive knowledge about knowing why things work will come out of understanding the science behind it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mallory, when were you first introduced to the Great British Baking Show, known here in America, or Great British Bake Off? And what do you think of it back then?
So I'm obsessed with any sort of food documentary or shows about food. I'm obsessed with eating food, like everything about food and food content and food media I absorb as quickly as possible. And so I'm pretty much always perusing Netflix for some sort of either baking or food or cooking show. But I tend not to like American competition shows very much because they are just so competitive, and it doesn't seem as like genuine. And I also like informative content as well. So what I love about Bake Off, I started watching it. When did it start over here? When did it come over on Netflix? Was it 2014?
I honestly don't know.
We should have this number written down somewhere. We'll work on it. But I pretty much started watching it almost immediately after it was available and fell in love with it very quickly for two reasons. One was that because it was just so British and everybody was so kind to each other that you felt like you really got to like experience everything along with the team. And it felt like a team rather than a bunch of contestants fighting against each other, I guess. And then I also really loved it because each bake that they did, they sort of walked you through the process of how they were getting there, and learning along with them made me want to explore baking more, made me want to try the new techniques that they were using, introduced me to new recipes that I never heard of before. And so I think that's really why it appealed so much to me, and I've been watching it ever since, and just loving every minute of it. I love the hosts, the different recipes. I don't know.
I first watched Great British Baking Show with my ex-boyfriend, which is hilarious, because I went over his place and he was like, "Oh, there's this great show, you should watch it," because he knew I was like a full-on Anglophile, and so he was like, "You should watch a show," and we like watched the first episode or two together, and then like the terrible person I am, I went home and watched all of the rest of the episodes by myself instead of waiting for him to watch it together.
And that was the beginning of the end for you too, wasn't it? That was it. That's how we knew. He was like,
it took like
leave.
6 months later, but like, maybe not. I mean, I was in love with it from the start. Also, by the way, you were right, 2014.
Oh, nailed it.
Nailed it. That's a different show. So I started watching it by myself or with him, and then kind of wandered off into myself and, as you said, absorbed it as fast as I possibly could. And I loved it because I was already such a fan of British culture. I studied there while I was in school and wanted as much British culture as I could get. And so, like, my room at home, it was painted like Smurf blue because I was like 7 when I decided
That's horrifying. Oh my goodness. I love it.
I love my Smurf blue room. But what was great about it was that it matches the colors red, white, black very perfectly. And so like my whole room was travel and British inspired. So it's just like really cute. And I like British stuff all over the place. I like yearn to go back and live in London, but Bake Off was a nice little way to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel the same way with you. I was like, I do love some like Christmas baking competitions. The like fast paced and like everyone's at each other's throats and like, I'm the best person here. How do they not see that?
Exactly. I hate that.
Like, I hate it so much. And it happens a lot. Or like, as I was saying earlier to you today, like there are baking competitions where they'll like throw in something in the middle of the show with like, okay, bakers, now you have to do this and like add this to your dessert. That was never, it's like always much calmer on Bake Off. It's always beautiful and serene and like calm and collected.
And not every time, but very often I will look at what they're baking on Bake Off and go, I can do that. And that's sort of, I think, what we're doing here. But I think that's what attracted me to so much to it in the beginning, is that I was able to be like, oh, that's doable. I want to try that.
As much as I would love to bake like a 14-tier cake that looks like SpongeBob or whatever Food Network is putting out these days, I could see myself making a classic British cake.
Well, here you are saying now that Swiss rolls are your favorite. And that's all thanks to GBBO.
100%.
So in the line of Bake Off, obviously there's a bunch of different seasons. We've got some new hosts now, some new judges, or one new judge really. Do you have a favorite among them that you tend to prefer over the others? I'll say right away I don't. So I'll let you take this one away. I think
really?
I don't. I was trying to think for a second. I think they're all great. There are some that I like less, but I don't have that knowledge fixed within my brain.
So I think by far my favorite series was series 6. So here in America, collection 2. Because Nadia is probably the most perfect human being.
Love Nadia.
Nadia is amazing, and I love her to bits. Go Nadia, because she's like gone off and done amazing things after Bake Off, and like
I know, I'm so
she's
happy
living
for
her best life. So I think I'd say season 6 is probably my favorite. I actually series 5 I haven't watched a whole lot of because of dun 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 Bingate. Like I refuse, like don't want to watch that.
Really? You've
'Cause it,
never
like,
seen
stresses-
that episode?
Well, of course I've seen it.
Okay.
I just like when I go back to replay it, I like don't want to watch it because it like stresses me out.
Aw, I just feel bad. I feel
right.
really bad for Ian.
My brother, who like I didn't know was watching Bake Off, texted me in a rage that they had sent him home. Hashtag spoiler alert. This whole show's to me a spoiler alert, just so you know. They sent Ian home. He was so upset. He had to like turn off Netflix. He was so
Oh my
pissed.
goodness.
And it was like the most like I think it's the most I've ever connected with my brother was that moment. I was like, yes, I feel you so much. But you know, there's also other. Why would you ever ask me what my favorite is? I love them all.
Exactly.
I do love Chetna from series 5 because she's also wonderful. Andrea from series 7, Bryony in series 9, and Henry from series 10. I mean, obviously, they're all just like lovely people, and they're super cute and adorable, and that's a weird thing to say, but they're the most calming and like nice people. And I like they're not as like hard edge as like American competition shows always are. Like I'm Sydney and I'm Courtney and we're from Sugar Bakery, and you're like no, they're just like lovely people that do lovely things. And I think someone recently described the show as endearing, and all those people are very endearing to me. I feel them, they're really lovely.
Yeah, I think that's super true.
This is something that I think we've talked a little bit about, but what unique perspective do you think you can bring to Hats Off to Bake Off, an amateur baking podcast?
It sounds now like I'm in a formal interview and I've suddenly grown very worried. No,
What are your greatest strengths and greatest weaknesses?
my greatest weakness,
You're just too good at
I
baking.
was literally struggling to think of one. Oh God.
That's
I
not
sound
the
like a
question, Audrey. You
horrible
can go back to the real
person.
question.
So I'm really excited to be on this podcast and talk a lot about, I feel like now that I've baked with you a little bit, I'm a much more adventurous eater and I love weird flavor combinations. And I'm so excited to explore those and use this as a chance to, normally I'm baking for other people. Like normally I bake often as a gift. Is sort of the way that I show that I care for somebody is I bake for them. And
the
I'm
pies
not
for special occasions,
exactly
and the birthday cakes and all that.
all that. And so I don't bake for myself very often. And so the bakes that we do here are really such a fun opportunity for me to explore flavor combinations that I would have never thought to put together before. And I'm also really excited to talk about the science side of things. As we've talked about a little bit, we're going to be delving into some different sides of like either the history or the science of a bake. And Nick will be covering a bit of the history piece. That's something that he's more passionate about. I'll be talking a little bit more about science. That's just something that really intrigues me about how these forms of cooking can be so, like all of it depends on these actual chemical reactions that are taking place. And that's wild to me.
I'm super excited about those segments. I'm really pumped. Always been a nerd, so I want to know more. My unique perspective, I feel, in the show is, as Mallory mentioned before, I got a lot of weird food restrictions. And so trying to find things that I like that aren't like super bland has been fun time growing up. So I was recently diagnosed with type 2 diabetes this past summer, which is annoying, but I'm doing really well actually, which is great. And so I've been doing a lot of like low carb baking, trying to figure that out, which is like a whole other spectrum of baking where like you get into replacements for things. If you're not using flour, what are you using? Like if you're not using sugar, what other like the 17 different sweetener varieties you're using? Like it all just changes everything you think is baking as soon as you get into that. And so that's one half of it. The other half of it is that I have a bunch of allergies, everything from tree nuts to shellfish to basically every tree pollen there is known to man. So just allergies suck in general. So I just have like weird things like, spoiler, I made Florentines today because for our biscuit episode, and I can't eat almonds. I can't eat tree nuts and walnuts, like anything that might
Fresh
be
fruit.
Fresh fruits, tree nuts, shellfish, green beans, peas, all of it. And so because I couldn't eat the tree nuts, I couldn't make a traditional Florentine. So I like went out and found like an oatmeal Florentine. It was a really great success and it worked super well. But like, I was like, what am I going to do? I want to make a Florentine, but I can't eat a traditional Florentine. So you explore, you find new ways. and you adapt. I mean, when I got diagnosed with diabetes in June, it was like 10 days before my birthday.
Oof.
Exactly. And I was like, there is no way that this diagnosis is going to get in the way of me eating birthday cake. So I went and found a recipe for low-carb chocolate brownies and a low-carb cream cheese frosting. And I made these little like brownie bites with frosting on them. And they were really good. They kind of taste like a chocolate frittata, which is a little terrifying. But believe me, they are actually pretty good.
I'm considering the concept of a chocolate frittata in my mind.
This is like you mix
like
cream
a souffle?
cheese. It's like cream cheese and like 6 eggs and cocoa powder and then fake sugar. And so it's so eggy and a little bit cheesy that you're like, what's going on in my mouth? And it does look kind of like a brownie, a vague resemblance of a brownie. And then you put enough fake cream cheese frosting on it and you're like, you don't even recognize that it's not a brownie, but like fake sugar doesn't brown. So you have difficulty with that. But
I did not know that, actually.
So it sometimes it can caramelize, kind of, but it doesn't like work the same way as like a brownie would in the oven. Like it stays almost fudge-like the entire time. I should make this recipe for you at some point. It's a weird recipe, but it works out nicely.
So you're kind of leading the charge here. What are you most excited for as we start to produce and actually get these episodes there?
I think I'm most excited for doing all the bakes that I wouldn't normally do. Mm-hmm. Like if I wasn't doing this, it would probably take me years to even try choux pastry, to even try making different kinds of bread. I think if I wasn't doing this, I would have gotten to those at some point. But I think if I want to like keep up with the episodes, I'll like keep baking and keep doing things. And so I think learning all the bakes as we go will be a really great way of getting that baking knowledge that I've always wanted.
Yeah. I think most excited to learn more about each one. Like I know you've started prepping some of your history bits. I'm really starting to research more about the different science things. That sounds so lame when I say it like that, science things. Like it doesn't sound technical at all.
Hey, baking is a science.
Baking is a science.
It's a little bit of an art.
And we'll be saying more complicated words than science things once we get into it, actually. But I think I'm really excited to just learn more. I love learning. I love like accumulating knowledge. And so I think I'm just really excited to sit down and have you teach me things for free.
I am so excited to tell you about food history because I've like I've like prepared episodes for cakes and for biscuits. And like there's some weird stuff in there.
I'm so ready. It's
very funny that I'm doing the history bits because I have 2 Ds on my college transcript and they're both from history. I have gotten no other Ds on my college transcript except for my 2 history courses.
This is a chance to redeem yourself, Nick.
This is my redeeming
And I'll
moment.
be grading you at the end of each episode, so be ready.
That's not terrifying at all.
Good luck.
I mean, does that mean I grade you on your science projects?
You can.
I'm sure it'll be
And I have to be less terrifying than Paul Hollywood, if we're being honest. You know what I mean? Although I feel like, I've got blue eyes, so maybe you're just like...
A smolder.
I don't have his smolder. I wish I did. I'd be unstoppable.
Okay, this is my favorite little bonus question I wanted to ask.
Okay.
Who do you think you're most like? Paul, Mary, Prue, Sue or Mel, Noel or Sandy? And then who do you think I am?
Oh my gosh. I think... Oh, this is tough. Okay, I think I'm like the perfect middle ground of Paul and Mary. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Okay.
I feel like I have some of the like hard exterior of Paul Hollywood, but on the inside I'm all round the outside and then once through the middle. Like I feel like my inner monologue is much more Mary Berry.
That's Julia Child, I'm pretty sure.
I think it's Paul making fun of Mary, who's probably actually quoting Julia Child.
Exactly.
But I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe a little bit of Noel in there. You're going to think this is funny. I see a lot of Prue in you.
That's hilarious because, so I was going to say, I dream to grow up to be like Sandy because Sandy might be my favorite person ever.
Sandy's pretty great.
However, I have here in my notes, I feel like I end up being more like Prue.
Amazing. I did it.
So A+ for that.
That's so funny. I love that you think that.
Though, however, just like make sure I never say like definitely worth the calories.
Yeah.
Because if I say that, like the podcast is over. I'm just like, I'm done.
Now I just have to buy you chunky jewelry, and then you'll be all set.
I mean, I wouldn't say no to that.
Okay, who do you think I'm most like?
See, this is the part I didn't think about actually.
I'm like an amalgam
I think so.
of several.
I feel that you have the like personality of like Sue.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like you would be that person in real life.
She's
but in,
often like snatching pieces of other people's bakes,
which
I do relate to a lot.
you eat pretty much anything that we put in front
My
of you.
favorite thing, this is true. It's bad. But my favorite thing to do while baking is like before anything is ready to just eat it, like and eat the crumbs and eat like all the slices.
I mean, it's great because you can just say like, oh, like a baker should be testing their food as they're baking it.
Yeah, it's a dirty lie. I just want to eat it.
That makes sense. Yeah, but I think so. You're kind of like a Sue, but I can definitely feel your Paul attachment. Like you are a serious baker. You know your stuff.
I do this thing sometimes that really throws people off, and I've been trying to be a lot better about it, is that I often will forget to put expressions on my face when I'm talking, and it can be I've had a few people tell me that I'm intimidating upon first meeting me, which is so hilarious to me because I'm the softest, least intimidating person, but I forget to look animated. And so sometimes I'm just staring at you with dead eyes and I say, I'm really excited to do this podcast with you, Nick, but there's no expression in my face.
Hey, it's fine. They'll never see your face, Mallory.
It's
so
true.
You can literally have just RBF all the time.
Yeah. I'm grateful for that.
I mean, until we start doing live shows, which we could do.
No.
I don't know what we do, but we could.
It would just be us up on a stage.
Or maybe like audience could like bring their bakes in and we could be like,
It'd be cute.
look at this beautiful
Be like
bake.
a family hotbo picnic.
Hotbo picnic. That's cute. I like that.
Hotbo picnic.
Make it happen with all your subscriptions and whatnots.
All 2 of them.
Hey. There'll be at least 3 or 4.
Okay. I'm excited.
That brings us to the end of our little introductions episode. I hope you had fun. We'll have definitely more for you in the future. We plan to release episodes about every 2 weeks or so. And we plan to have a couple recorded at once so we can just like go for it. This is the part where we like tell you to like follow us and share the podcast. So please do follow us we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram. Everything is listed under HOTBOPOD. So what is that, you ask? It's just the initials for Hats Off to Bake Off, HOTBOPOD.
You got there.
I did it right.
This will be practice for both of us.
HOTBOPOD. So Facebook.com/HotBoPod, Twitter and Instagram @HotBoPod, #HotBoPod. Got it all set up. Even HotBoPod.com.
So exciting.
Right? So we're really excited for you to hear our first like actual episode of Hotbo. We're really excited to do it for you. And we should be on probably Libsyn and like a bunch of other podcasting apps. So hopefully it'll be on Apple Podcasts and on
we'll let
Stitcher,
you know.
I guess. We'll
once we
be
have that
around.
figured out.
We'll post it all over the place. Don't you worry. We'll pester you for sure. It'd be like, hey, follow us.
It'll be constant.
But we'll have cookies there, like #HotBoPod on our cookies. Think about it. One last little thing I want to do for Hats Off to Bake Off is a little hats off moment. So in the future, it'll be about who was eliminated during the week. So we can talk about what they're doing now and what they're up to and that kind of stuff. But this week, because we're not talking about an episode, I'd say we're doing a hats off to Saint Gregory.
Who is St. Gregory, Nick? What is this?
Great question. Thank you for asking.
I fell right into your trap.
Ha ha! St. Gregory. Why St. Gregory? Well, first of all, it's a nod to the beautiful Welford Park, where Great British Bake Off has been since 2014. So they like moved at the beginning of Collection 1, Series 5. It's located in the village of Welford in the British County Berkshire. Welford Park is a privately owned residence, currently owned by James Puxley. Welford Park is most well known for its annual display of snowdrops. Mallory can see a picture. I'm sorry that you guys cannot, but you can definitely
did put just a picture right into this beautiful audio medium of ours. I'm here for it.
You know, I can try to describe this, but that would be very strange and take a long time. But there are these gorgeous white flowers which like stretch on for as far as I can see. They ironically, as I said, mark the beginning of the end of winter. So like the it's covered in white flowers. So it looks like a snow patch, really. They're called snowdrops. You can visit Welford Park and view the arrays of flowers and walk the paths. This year, from the 29th of January to the 1st of March. You can buy also. They have like super cute aprons that I really, really want.
This is just one big secret ad for Welford Park.
Evidently not sponsored.
You just got really excited.
They have cute aprons and oven gloves and bags and napkins and tea towels and all kinds of stuff.
This is really just Nick's wish list. If you're wondering what to buy, Nick, it's all of
we
these
could have some
snowdrop
great
aprons.
super fans. And a little bit of Bake Off trivia is so they set up and start taping in April, and they run for about 10 weeks at Welford Park.
And what does this have to do with St. Gregory?
Important question. Church of Welford, St. Gregory is located on the same grounds. So Pope Gregory I, or St. Gregory the Great, is the patron saint of musicians, singers, students, and teachers. We hope to be your teachers and students of the baking arts. I could have also made a Greg's joke, but that's pretty much awful. And only the British audience would understand that. So
I don't. Nope.
That's Greg's there. It's a very generic bakery, like a Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, okay. I was waiting for some sort of American comparison.
There we go. Yeah.
I have absolutely no British knowledge.
It's not like classy at all. Like it's not like.
But it'll get you
your
there. Donuts.
It'll give you a pasty and all that other stuff.
Okay.
So that's the end. We are so glad you're listening. We'll see you with our first legit episode in 2 weeks. As they say in the show, and I love this expression, it's in the lap of the gods now. And as I hope to close every episode with, as a way to like tell our listeners that you should go off and bake your own stuff. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
On your marks.
Get set.
Bake!